Non-stop rain that made everything outside look dark and dead. Water ran down the windows in crooked streams, and the wind kept blowing the branches of the pine tree beside our house against the siding. By Saturday night, I'd gotten so used to the sound that I barely noticed it anymore. My parents had left Friday morning for a weekend trip to Lake Tahoe, and since it was winter break, I had the house completely to myself. At first, it was perfect. I stayed up late, ordered food, and spent basically the entire day playing video games upstairs in my room. By around 11:30 that night, though, the house started feeling weird. I was sitting at my desk wearing my headset, completely focused on my game, when I heard a loud thump somewhere downstairs. I paused for a second and listened. Nothing. I took one headphone off. All I could hear was rain hitting the roof and tree branches scraping outside. "That's probably nothing," I muttered. The house made noises all the time when it got cold. Pipes, floorboards, the heater kicking on. I figured it was just one of those things, so I kept playing. A little while later, my stomach started growling hard enough to annoy me, so I paused the game and went downstairs to make something quick. I remember walking down the stairs half distracted, already thinking about making ramen or leftovers or something. Then I looked toward the kitchen and froze. The back door was cracked open. Only a few inches, but enough for cold air to drift inside. At first, I honestly thought maybe I forgot to shut it earlier. Then I saw the footprints. Wet boot prints covered the kitchen floor. Big ones. Mud and rainwater tracked across the tile from the back door into the house. I just stood there staring at them while this horrible feeling spread through my chest. Those weren't mine, and they definitely weren't my parents. I followed the prints with my eyes. They disappeared farther into the dark hallway. That's when I heard it. A floorboard upstairs, right above me. Every part of my body went cold. Someone was in the house. I backed away slowly from the kitchen counter, trying not to make a sound while pulling my phone out of my pocket. My hands were shaking so badly I almost dropped it. I dialed 911. The operator answered almost immediately.
911, what's your emergency?
"There's someone in my house," I whispered. My voice barely worked. "I'm home alone. Are you in a safe location?" I don't know. Then I heard footsteps upstairs. Slow and heavy. My stomach dropped instantly. My room. The game. I had left it running. A few seconds later, I heard muffled gunfire and music from my TV upstairs. The footsteps stopped completely. Silence filled the house. Then I heard a man's voice.
"Hello?"
Low, raspy. I covered my mouth with my hand without even thinking. The operator kept talking calmly, telling me officers were on the way, but I could barely focus anymore. The footsteps started moving again upstairs. Closet doors opened. Drawers slammed shut. The guy was searching rooms, looking for me. Then everything went quiet again. A second later, I heard the stairs creak, one step at a time. He was coming downstairs. I backed into the laundry room, beside the kitchen, and squeezed myself into the tiny space between the washing machine and the wall. It barely hid me, but it was the only place I could think of. I crouched there shaking while the footsteps reached the bottom floor. I could hear water falling from his clothes onto the hardwood. The house smelled like wet dirt and rain. The man moved around the kitchen slowly, opening cabinets and drawers. I remember trying so hard not to breathe too loudly that my chest actually hurt. Then the footsteps stopped, right outside the laundry room. I stared through the small crack beside the doorway, and I saw him. He was tall, probably at least 6'2", but terrifyingly skinny. Pale skin, no shirt even though it was freezing outside. His ribs stuck out sharply under his skin, and his soaked jeans were ripped up around the knees. He looked almost sick, like he hadn't slept in weeks. Water dripped from his hair onto the floor while he stood there breathing heavily. Then he slowly turned his head toward the laundry room, toward me. I honestly thought I was about to die. Then suddenly, from outside, police sirens. I felt a sense of relief. I then saw the guy jerk his head toward the window. Instantly, more sirens followed, louder this time. Without saying a word, he sprinted toward the back door. I heard him slam into it and crash outside into the rain. The operator told me officers were arriving, but I stayed hidden until I saw red and blue lights flashing through the windows. A few minutes later, the police came inside and found me still crouched beside the washing machine, shaking uncontrollably. One of the officers eventually came back inside after searching the yard. "We got him," he said. "Where was he?" I asked. "In the shed behind your backyard fence." I looked outside through the window as they walked him toward the police car in handcuffs. Up close, he somehow looked even worse. Pale. Barefoot now, shivering violently in the rain with his ripped jeans hanging loosely from his waist. The officer told me they thought he'd been hiding around the neighborhood, trying to stay dry, and assumed our house was empty that night. Nevertheless, I kept thinking about one thing over and over afterward. If I hadn't gone downstairs because I was hungry, I never would have known someone else was inside the house with me. I was 24 at the time of this story, and was going to house sit for my friend. Let's call him Marcus for this story, and I had only agreed to house sit because my friend Marcus practically begged me. He was leaving town for 4 days to visit family for Christmas and didn't want to leave his dog alone with strangers coming in and out of the house. He told me it'd be easy, just feed the dog twice a day, bring in the mail, and make sure the pipes didn't freeze if the temperature dropped overnight. Honestly, I couldn't use the quiet. Work had been brutal that week. I worked long shifts at a warehouse outside Boise, and by the time Friday night came around, I was exhausted enough to fall asleep standing up. Marcus lived about 20 minutes outside town near a stretch of empty back roads, farmland, and dense forest. The kind of place where the nights got so dark you could barely see past the porch light. I got there around 7 p.m. The dog, a golden retriever named Daisy, greeted me at the door while freezing rain tapped softly against the windows. Marcus had left food in the fridge, and a note on the counter that mostly consisted of reminders about Daisy and Wi-Fi passwords. The whole house smelled faintly like coffee and fireplace smoke. It felt peaceful. By 10 p.m., I was laying on the couch under a blanket with the TV playing quietly in the background. Daisy was curled up asleep near my feet, and I remember thinking how nice it felt to finally relax after the week I'd had. At some point, I passed out. I don't know how long I was asleep before something woke me up. At first, I thought it was part of a dream, a soft metallic sound. Clink, then silence. I opened my eyes slowly. The TV was still on, flickering dim light across the living room. But something felt off immediately. Daisy was no longer asleep. She stood near the hallway, completely still, ears raised, staring into the darkness toward the kitchen. I pushed myself upright, still half asleep. "Daisy," I called out. Her low growl instantly made my stomach tighten. Then I heard it again. A noise from the kitchen, like someone carefully setting something down on the counter. Every bit of sleep vanished from my body. I muted the TV and listened. For a few seconds there was nothing. Then I heard it. A floorboard, not near me, behind me, upstairs. I turned slowly toward the staircase. The house suddenly felt massive and unfamiliar. I grabbed my phone from the coffee table and checked the time. 1:17 a.m. Another creak echoed upstairs. Someone was walking around. I immediately thought maybe Marcus had cameras and someone from security came by, or maybe a neighbor had a key. But deep down I already knew that wasn't true. Daisy started barking, loud, aggressive. The footsteps upstairs stopped instantly. Complete silence filled the house. Then I heard a woman's voice. "Hello?" she said. I froze. The voice sounded calm, almost gentle, which somehow made it even worse. I grabbed my phone and clipped Daisy's leash onto her collar before backing toward the basement door near the hallway. Marcus had shown me earlier that the basement had a heavy lock on the inside and a back exit that led outside near the tree line. At the time, it seemed random. Now it felt like the only reason I wasn't panicking completely. I hurried downstairs with Daisy close beside me and quietly shut the basement door behind us. The second I locked it, I dialed 911. There's
911,
someone
what's your
inside
emergency?
the house, I whispered the moment the operator answered. Are you in a safe location? I'm in the basement. The door's locked. Stay there. Officers are on the way. The basement was cold and unfinished, lit only by a single hanging bulb near the stairs. Boxes and old furniture cast long shadows across the concrete floor while rainwater rattled softly against the small basement windows. Upstairs, the woman started moving again. Slow footsteps crossed the hallway overhead. Then drawers opening, closets, doors. She was searching the rooms one by one. Daisy stood beside me, growling quietly while I backed farther into the basement toward the exit door. The operator stayed on the line with me, asking questions I barely remember answering because all I could focus on were the noises upstairs. Then everything went quiet. A few seconds later, footsteps on the first floor. She had come downstairs. I stared at the basement door while my heartbeats pounded in my ears. The footsteps moved slowly across the kitchen overhead. Then into the hallway, closer and closer. Finally, they stopped directly outside the basement door. Silence filled the house once again. Then the doorknob slowly rattled. Once, twice, Daisy barked violently. The woman stopped moving for a second before speaking through the door. I know you're down there, she said. My entire body went cold. I backed toward the basement exit, gripping Daisy's leash so tightly my hand hurt. Then, the basement door shook hard. She hit it again. The lock held, but I heard her breathing on the other side now, fast and uneven. Please open the door, she suddenly said. Her voice sounded shaky now, older. Confused, I remember the operator telling me officers were almost there, but it sounded distant compared to the noise of the woman hitting the door again. Then suddenly, outside, sirens, the banging stopped instantly. Bright flashing lights swept across the basement windows. Sheriff's department, someone shouted outside. I heard hurried footsteps upstairs, followed by the back door slamming open. A minute later, deputies entered through the basement exit while another group searched the property outside. I was still shaking so badly I could barely stand when they brought me upstairs. About 20 minutes later, one of the deputies came back into the house. I later found out she was found hiding in the tree line behind the house. The deputy explained she was an older woman, probably in her 60s, who had apparently wandered away from a nearby assisted living facility earlier that evening during the storm. According to them, she was mentally unstable and likely confused about where she was. One of the officers had also found a kitchen knife lying in the muddy grass near the backyard fence where she apparently dropped it while running toward the forest. That part stuck with me, because until then, a small part of me had still been trying to believe maybe I'd overreacted somehow. But hearing that they found the knife made everything feel terrifyingly real again. After the police left and the house finally went quiet, I stood staring out the kitchen window toward the dark forest behind the property. The rain had finally stopped, but the trees still swayed slowly in the wind. And for the rest of the night, every movement in those woods made me think I saw someone standing between the trees.